Guys, just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be breaking down USC and Washington, crucial matchup in the Pac-12. Huskies looking to stay undefeated while the Trojans have their last gasp at winning the conference. Looking at this spread, 3.5 in favor of the road Huskies. Total is a whopping number 76.5. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC, live from the Coliseum in Los Angeles. Looking at this Washington offense, Nick, this is certainly one of the more polished groups in the country, led by Michael Penix. 2,945 yards. That's about 370 yards a pop. 24 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He certainly hasn't been the greatest since the Oregon game. Arizona State, 2 interceptions, no picks, no offensive touchdowns. 369 4 scores against Stanford, but he did complete, a season low 55%. And that game was, a bit of a slugfest for them, winning 42-33. They're getting healthier at pass catcher, though. Romo Dunn's has been terrific with 907 and 7 touchdowns. Jalen Polk, he's always played, a bit of a third fiddle, at least last year. Stepped up in Jalen McMillan's absence, 836 and 7 touchdowns. Gurmy Bernard, 20 grabs. He's been big with Millen being down. Giles Jackson had some crucial receptions. And Jack Westover, 4 touchdowns at tight end. McMillan, though, 311 yards and 3 touchdowns in 5 games, working his way back into the lineup. This is the most explosive passing attack in the country. Penix uncorks a beautiful deep ball. He's just such a pain to defend. And, of course, we'll talk about the rest of this offense as well. But the pockets have been crystal clear for him. He's had pockets for days. The time's been terrific. That allows him to just dial up these tough routes downfield vertically. They do a lot with this offense in terms of being able to throw the football. What do you make of Penix and his group of weapons?
This is a fantastic offense for Washington. They looked a little bit stagnant the last 2 games, especially against Arizona State, where they really struggled. An uncharacteristic performance for them. This is a fantastic offense. 500 yards of total offense per game. 400 total yards of offense through the air for this team. Penix is just an absolute star. He should be the Heisman frontrunner, in my opinion. I think he's certainly up there in the 1, 2, 3 conversation. Nearly 3,000 yards passing, 24 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Obviously, 6 interceptions have been a bit of an issue as of late. They seem to have popped up out of nowhere. The interceptions does concern me a little bit, but I think it's not a big issue against a USC defense that's a little weak, certainly, to put it lightly. O'Dones is fantastic. 907 yards receiving for him, 17.8 yards per catch, 7 scores. Jalen Polk has stepped up big time. 836, 18.2, and 7 scores. McMillan, when he's healthy, is a fantastic piece for this offense. 311 and 3 scores from 15.6 yards. Jeremy Bernard is also a good piece when he's playing fully healthy. 274, 13.7, and 1 score. Jack Westover is a very solid piece for this offense as well. 185 and 4 scores. 9.3 for him. There are some other pieces involved as well. This is a fantastic passing attack that's just high flying and high potential. We knew this was going to be a great unit coming into the season. We were trying to figure out exactly how much points per game and how many yards per game they put up. This number is very staggering so far, and it's very impressive.
The run game, of course, in this, air raid attack certainly need to be a little bit complimentary. Got 4.2 yards per carry, 24 attempts a game, 102 yards a contest. I thought they were pretty complimentary against Oregon. They certainly did their job, being able to pick up some nice yards. Only 99 yards rushing, but I think, when you're watching that game, you could tell that some of the runs they had with Johnson were effective. And, they've had less than 111 yards in 4 straight games now. Dylan Johnson, 430 and 6 touchdowns. Hasn't been really as impactful as expected as a pass catcher, but he certainly has done his role very well. And this offensive line's been great. Roger Rosengarten, Troy Fatuna, right and left tackle respectively, have just been flat out elite, really, in pass protection. A lot of snaps for these guys. I mean, no one's going to be dropping back as much as these guys are this season, so only 2 sacks allowed combined. That's a very impressive number, right? Parker Brailsford at center has been very sound as well. Nice leader for them there. Nate Kolepto at left guard. He's been more of a liability here for them. Brailsford, he can play, right guard as well. So some versatility there if they need him to. Right guard certainly has been an interesting position for this group. Gary and Hatchett has been a big weakness for them at that position. But top to bottom, this is a great offensive line, Nick. 2 bookend tackles is exactly what you want. And, an offense that's going to be resulting in 50, 60 dropbacks, and they play it to perfection. I think that's probably the most dangerous part of this offense is a quarterback that can uncork it deep, has all the time in the world.
That certainly is a benefit. You have all the time in the world. Dylan Johnson's a good back. Hasn't quite hit the heights we thought he would, but then again, this is an air raid offense, so you can't really expect a whole lot out of your back. Just be a compliment. Just be there as an option for him. 430, 4.9, and 6 scores for him. Penix has all the time in the world behind this great offensive line. It's a very stout unit. He has so much time in the pocket. Like you said, he can just uncork that deep ball and launch it whenever he needs be. Penix is having a fantastic season. As long as he has time in the pocket, and if USC struggles to get after him, he'll have all day to pick them apart downfield.
Looking at the USC offense, they really finally found that high gear again. They struggled a bit against Utah. They ended up having a resilient efforts there. Williams didn't have a passing touchdown, even though he set up a beautiful deep ball. Not many players in college football are going to be able to throw 60 yards downfield, hit them at the 1-yard line. So, everyone was making a lot of comments over the past 2 weeks, and certainly deservedly so. But again, he's making plays nobody else is going to make. Certainly has bounced back from that poor game against Notre Dame. 369, 2 passing touchdowns against Cal. This season he's been great. 9 rushing touchdowns, had 2 of them against the Gold Bears in Berkeley. 2,600 yards passing, 25 touchdowns. Williams is still having a phenomenal year, Nick. Certainly maybe hasn't been exactly on par as a season ago. This is a guy that's certainly lighting it up, is completing at a higher clip. And, some of the guys downfield, they've been struggling to get open a little bit. Taj Washington's still been great, though, 7-11 and 5 touchdowns. 519 and 9 scores for Brendan Rice. Mario Williams has been inconsistent, but has proven to be a nice slot weapon. Zachariah Branch, they love him involved in a variety of different ways. Seems to be fully healthy heading into this game. Dorian Singer as well, 21 receptions. Lake McCree's been a reliable tight end as well. What do you make of this USC passing attack? Watching them over the past couple of weeks, it certainly has been frustrating. Williams, he's expected to make an eye-popping play each time, and even when he's evading the pocket, it's not always going to be a completed pass. And I think that certainly has led to a little bit of morale, being lost on this football team.
Has been a bit frustrating. This is still a fantastic offense, 482 yards per game through so far of total offense, 328 through the air. Williams, for his part, having a good season. I think the spotlight's on him as the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. So people are examining every little error he makes. I think he's having a great season by pretty much all metrics. Obviously, the 2 losses are not great. Did not look good in the Notre Dame game with all the turnovers, and didn't look fantastic against Utah either. 25 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 2,646 total yards of passing for him. Also got some yards on the ground and some scores on the ground from him. Taj Washington leading the way, 7-11 receiving yards, 20.3 yards per catch, 5 scores. Brendan Rice, 519, 17.3, and 9 touchdowns for him. Mario Williams, haven't really seen him break out like we'd hoped. 259 and 1 score. Zachariah Branch is looking good as well, jumping into the spotlight at 223 yards receiving and 2 scores. Dorian Singer, 3 touchdowns, 223 yards receiving as well, with a couple more catches. Obviously, the attention was always going to be on Caleb Williams' passing attack after the season they had last year in his Heisman winning campaign. Yes, it's been a little disappointing compared to that standard, but I think it's still a fantastic passing attack. And these are 2 teams with incredible passing attacks going at it at the Coliseum this weekend.
Yeah, the Huskies certainly have the edge at offensive line. Jonah Menhem, left tackle, has been the best player for them once more on this O-line. Jarrett Kingston's kicked out the right tackle, allowing Mason Murphy to get in at right guard. And that certainly has been beneficial for them, I think, in both capacities. The run game against Utah, they really sparked some plays early. Only 23 attempts rushing. Lincoln, he just avoided, trying to do more with this ground game. 40 carries for $128 against Cal. I mean, there's just been an inconsistency. They're running on 5 games now of under 150 yards rushing after a hot start to the year. We talked about last year how this run game certainly was overshadowed of how poor it was, considering how good Caleb was, right? So, and that certainly has bled into this season, where the rushing attack is just not showcasing that dominance. Marshawn Lloyd has great speed, and they just don't seem to be fully committed to the run, even though this guy's averaging over 7.5 yards per carry. He has 8 touchdowns. Austin Jones, still, a guy who's physical, 258 and 5 touchdowns. What's going on with this ground game, Nick? Is it the inability to do it? Is the lack of commitment for Lincoln? Again, 40 carries this past week, and Marshawn Lloyd, 1 run, accounted for, a good chunk of that.
I think it is certainly the lack of commitment from Lincoln Riley here. I think he has to go to the ground game more often, because Marshawn Lloyd's a fantastic back when you use him. 766, 7.7 yards per carry, and 8 scores. Austin Jones, 258, and the 5 scores on the ground. Caleb Williams has 9 scores on the ground as well, 136. Obviously limited carries for him, but he could try and avoid hurting that ankle again, but they do use him when they need to. I think Lloyd's a fantastic back, and Lincoln Riley's not using him quite to the full potential. 103 total yards on the ground. It's not a bad number per game as your average, but I need to see more of this rushing attack. I think you can't rely totally on Caleb Williams, and that's the issue they're making here, is they're relying way too much on Caleb Williams to make magic happen. You got to support him and have that balance. Lloyd's a fantastic back. I'd use him.
Look at this Washington defense they'll be facing, against Oregon. It was an uphill battle, 337 through the air, 2 of 4, on the ground, and they certainly, had 3 stops on 4th down, so they did their part right, and that's what you're going to do. You give up a lot of yards. If you step up in the biggest moments, mainly people are going to be quiet here, right, but we're over here going to break this down. Washington's defense has certainly been a little disappointing. They did their job against Arizona State. You held them to 7 points, 341 yards. Stanford, though, 499. They lit it up there, right? They give up a lot of yards in garbage time to California as well. I think overall this is still a very sound defense. Been not great. That's not a great going on the road against the Cardinal and struggling like that certainly is not ideal. This is a very talented unit, though. Edu Fano-Lafashio leading them in tackles. Up front, Zion Tupola Fatu, another guy who's really sound for them. Carson Bruner, his linebacking position. I like some of the players they have on this defense. Braylon Trice as well. But these guys have not lived up to their potential. I know Lafashio and Zion have both had, injuries in the past, especially Uafagio. Braylon Trice, though, I mean, what is he doing? I picked him to be, conference player of the year on the defensive side of the ball. He has 2 sacks. The team only has 10. One of the nation's worst pass rushes, Nick. They got to be better here in this area, especially against Caleb Williams. If he has all day, they're definitely going to get picked apart because the secondary is their weakest part. Just very disappointed with Kalen DeBoer's defense. Good news for him, though, his offense has been dynamite. But what's going on the side of the ball?
This defense is not good, giving up. We rag on USC's defense, saying they're a bad unit, they're struggling. We've made sure to pick apart USC's trouble on defense. We got to look at Washington's struggle on defense because this is definitely a team that is struggling as well. 400 total yards of defense allowed per game for the opposing offenses, 246 yards allowed through the air, 135 on the ground. This unit is struggling across the board. This front seven is not doing their job. Like you said, Uafashano is leading the way with 57 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. His 2 sacks are tied with Trice for the most for the team, but they really are struggling to produce. Trice, I expected way more out of him. 24 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Not good enough numbers if you're Braylon Trice. Afonso Tuipulotu as well, 39 total tackles, only half a sack, 1 tackle for loss. Zion Tuipulotu, 14 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. I mean, these numbers are just not good at all. This is a very poor front seven that's having trouble. They got to find a way to put pressure on Caleb Williams because, like you said, if he has time in the pocket, he's going to pick you downfield and complete passes.
Afonso Tuipulotu, the linebacker, has also been pretty solid for them as a tackler. Braylon Trice, he does a great job winning at the point of attack. Just the scarce of production is certainly very concerning. Defensive tackle Tuli Letua-Gasanoa should be back for this game. He's been a great run defender, one of those old school type players in the middle, plays with plenty of physicality, around 300 pounds. And, this is certainly a team that wants to try to create more penetration. And overall, they've been sound against the run, but they were not great in terms of tackling, being able to bring the guy down against Oregon. That's certainly a tougher game for them. In the last 2 weeks, they've also had some bad plays. They've given up 6 rushing touchdowns over the last 3 contests. So this has been a very good Washington run defense, I'd say. That game against Oregon's the only one that gave up more than 200 in, but certainly some inconsistencies for them. And that leads you to the secondary. This is certainly going to be the weakest part of this defense. Again, Stanford just had a home run against them. Oregon, Bo Nix, they did a good job of limiting the big plays, I thought, in that game. Still gave them 75% completion rate, less than 8 yards per attempt. That's certainly a fair number. Again, they were up like 40 points against Cal before they finally had its, real success. So the 363 there and 3 touchdowns, a little bit skewed. Did snag 9 interceptions so far this season, though. A lot of attempts, though, from this defense they've given up. I think that's one thing that needs to be construed as well, is they're ahead in these games. So obviously the opponent's going to be throwing a lot. They're going to be playing off, and that certainly has been beneficial for them. That's not going to be the case in this game, Nick. It certainly shouldn't be. And even if they are up, they're going to have a big opportunity to allow a lot of yards, though. Jabbar Muhammad, I thought he made some good plays against Oregon. These linebackers have been solid in coverage. Cabrin, Fabulanen, he's been good in coverage from his safety position. Asa Turner overall has been a good player. I think he's back and fully healthy. Michelle Powell. They certainly have some nice players here. Dominic Hampton as well, one of their top tacklers. He's more of a box guy. This is a secondary, though. Again, Nick, they've allowed a lot of yards ahead in some of these games. But it's going to be a big contest here, especially the aforementioned Muhammad and Elijah Jackson. These guys overall for the season haven't been all that great, really just in spurts. How do you think they're going to do here against SC and a lot of speed?
This is certainly a secondary unit that's been disappointing at times. They need to find a way to buckle down. They're good at getting picks, so certainly if they can make Williams uncomfortable, he could throw interceptions. That could certainly benefit this team. I think that is something that you want to look at if you're a Washington fan. Dominic Hampton is leading the way in terms of tackles in the secondary, 55 total tackles, second on the team, 2 pass breakups, a pick for him. Elijah Jackson, 4 pass breakups, 33 total tackles for him. Good numbers. Jabbar Muhammad, 1 pick, 6 pass breakups, 29 total tackles, good in coverage. Thaddeus Dixon, 11 total tackles, 5 pass breakups, another player great in coverage. Misha Powell, 6 pass breakups, 2 picks for him, 20 total tackles. So they do have some good numbers in terms of picks and pass breakups. They are solid at times in coverage, but they just get beat downfield on occasion. Like you said, they are winning a lot of these games, so teams have to go to the pass to kind of catch up, and they're playing from behind, which is why some of these numbers are a little bit skewed because garbage time, things like that. This is a unit, though, they have to have a big day against this USC. There are so many different weapons in this USC offense, a lot of speed that can beat you any sort of way down the field. It's going to be an interesting matchup to watch.
Yeah, 110th nationally, 30-plus passing yard plays allowed. So they're certainly susceptible to the deep ball. Looking at the USC defense, this is somehow a unit that is worse than a season ago. Early on in the year, they certainly had some struggles, but there's plenty of things to look forward to, like their ability to get into the backfield. And that's kind of started to dry up a little bit. Alex Grinch, for some reason, still employed, Nick. We just don't know why. Defense played very good against Notre Dame, which was kind of anticipated with some of those more condensed formations and whatnot. Seemed like they had the same edge maybe against Utah, but you figured that physical ground game would be able to have success against them, and it did. 247 yards rushing, 235 through the air. Bryson Barnes, this is the only game he's had this year that's a good one. It was against USC because this defense is just absolutely terrible in the wrong positions. Jaden Ott should have had 400 yards rushing. They really anchored down in that second half against him in that ground game. But, on 9 carries, he was already up to like 140 yards rushing. End of the game with 235 as a team, 292 through the air. These aren't crazy quarterbacks. They're getting torn up apart, Nick. This is just a terrible defense. Alex Grinch should not be here. You've seen it against Colorado late. They were really getting torn up in that fourth quarter. 500 plus to Arizona as well. Arizona State was having some success. This is just a terrible defense overall, Nick. The best part about them, though, is their ability to get into the backfield. Jamil Muhammad, Solomon Byrd off the edge, while guys like Bear Alexander collapse the interior. Anthony Lucas has been solid as well. What do you make of this defense where Grinch just does not put these guys in the right spot despite having some talent here? I would quite frankly just call him a moron.
I can't believe this defense has gotten worse than it was last year. We really hope that they would take the step forward, and they have not. They've taken 2 steps backwards. This defense is struggling, and they have so many talented pieces. They added a great piece in Bear Alexander, 25 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sack, 3 pass breakups. You wanted to see more of Bear Alexander. He's just not been used properly, in my opinion. Mason Cobb, 55 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss for him. Cobb's a good player, one of the better players in this defense. Tackett Curtis, 36 total tackles, 3.5 tackles for 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. Solomon Byrd leads the way with some nice numbers for him. Him and Jamil Muhammad lead the way with sacks. Byrd, 34 total tackles, 9.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. Muhammad, 10 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 32 total tackles for him. Good numbers out of him. Romeo Height, 18 total tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. Those are the numbers they're producing in the backfield. So if they can get sacks, that certainly is a positive thing. That's the only positive for this team right now, is they can make things happen in the backfield and get sacks. If they can make Penix uncomfortable, they might have a chance here. But this defense is terrible, and this secondary we'll get to in a second is very bad as well.
Yeah, the missed tackles has been a problem. Mason Cobb leads them in that. He's also been really good for them at times. Tackett Curtis, a freshman, he's really been poor. You look at Eric Gentry, made big plays. He's actually been probably the best player on this defense. He had a pick and a forced fumble against Cal. Like you talked about Bear Alexander. He's been really good, especially creating pressure, but some mistakes like the ones against Utah really costed his team, and he knows it. He certainly took accountability for that. And like you said, the secondary, they're just out of position. Former 5-star Damani Jackson's playing like, an unranked prospect. Corey Foreman, a former 5-star, has been nowhere to found this season. This is just not very good coaching one bit. Christian Roland Wallace, Sierra Wright, these guys have really established themselves, I think, as the top corners, but their inconsistencies are pretty evident as well. But I think Roland Wallace has really emerged as the best. Good news for them, though, is they do have Kalen Bullock. He's still the best safety in the country. Most would probably say he's a very sound tackler, absolutely great in coverage. Zion Branch has been getting on the field more. Jalen Smith is the leading tackler. Guys like Prophet Brown are terrible. I'm not even sure if they still play, but I know he got burnt for a touchdown earlier this year. Secondary's not really been anything to rave about, Nick, one bit outside of Bullock. The corners, again, the inconsistencies are just a problem. It's just bad technique and bad coaching all around. Alex Grinch, I'd say, is continuously going to be the one to blame. And now they have to face a phenomenal deep ball thrower in Michael Penix, and they don't even have to be too cute. I think you're going to see a lot of, comebacks and curls, 10 and 15-yard routes. They're just going to eat up the secondary.
This is a matchup nightmare for the secondary. Jalen Smith's your leading tackler for this team, but he's still missing tackles as well. Not great in coverage. 56 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss. Kalen Bullock, probably your best player on this team on the defense. 47 total tackles, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups. This is a bad unit. Eric Gentry, 26 total tackles. Want to see more out of him. Christian Roland Wallace has 1 pick, 6 pass breakups, 25 total tackles. Want to see more out of him. The secondary is poor. This whole defense of Alex Grinch is terrible. 420 yards of total offense allowed, 248 passing, 172 on the ground. This is a bad unit that's got a bad matchup nightmare here. I said it against Notre Dame. I said it against Utah. These are just tough matchups for this USC team. They made a bad Utah offense look pretty good that scored 34 points last week. USC is certainly in trouble against a talented offense here against Washington. I beg your pardon, 2 weeks ago against Utah. They also give 49 points to Cal. This Cal offense is terrible. They give 41 to Colorado, 41 to Arizona. The numbers are just gaudy at this point. Washington can score a ton of points here. I wouldn't be shocked if they put up a ton of points on Saturday. This is a tough matchup for the Trojans.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the Cal offense is exactly terrible. I think that's a bit of an overreach there, but certainly not a unit they should be giving up basically 50 points and 500 plus yards to. Looking at the team comparisons, I think at quarterback it's as even as it gets, right? And I'm going to go with even there just to show respect to both guys. One's a Heisman winner, one might be one. At the running back position, SC will get the edge there of Jones and Marshawn Lloyd over a team that, has a nice running back in Dylan Johnson, but they certainly don't utilize him probably to the fullest of his abilities. And wide receiver, another one you could really argue even. Jalen McMillan being back, though, I'm going to call that a slight edge to Washington. Really can go either way. Offensive line, I think it's a clear edge for Washington. Every category on defense, I think USC does a better job with their defensive line and their production, so I think that's certainly something you could argue, Nick. I think that's the only one you'll try to make, is the Trojans having a better D-line, because it does seem to be more talented. It's been a flat-out embarrassment for them on defense, so it's really hard to give Alex Grinch and his horrendous mind any edges on that side of the ball.
I think the defense, I would potentially be leaning to give that edge to the defensive line. I think the defensive line does have an opportunity to get that edge, in my opinion, just because they are a more physically productive unit in the backfield, and Washington has no production in the backfield. I think the other defensive benefits do go to Washington. I think you're spot on with your offense. It is such a toss-up between the two quarterbacks, two phenomenal quarterbacks. I'd love to have either one of those signal callers for my team.
One of the final thoughts and prediction for this one, keys to the game, for Washington, just continue to run your offense like you typically do. You certainly don't want to play like you did against Arizona State, though, or even against Arizona, who's proven to be a really good defense. And then I think you want to look to create opportunities. If Oregon's going to go for it on fourth down 3 times, that's fine. You got to get the stops, and that's what they did. I think being opportunistic is probably the biggest thing going for them and for USC. Let Williams cook. At this point in the season, playoffs might be a long shot. You got a tough uphill battle ahead. And, we can really still mess up some people's seasons en route to salvaging a potential Pac-12 title. So I think just let them cook, uncork it, you continue to be aggressive, even more so than they have. And then, Alex Grinch just needs to be fired if the defense wants to do anything. That's a big key to the game. So if he's not fired before Saturday night, Nick, USC's going to have some trouble.
I certainly think USC will have some trouble. I'm going to pick Washington to win this game. I think this is a pretty easy pick. I'm going 42-38 is my score. I think it's a close game. I think there'll be some garbage time points for USC to try and get back in it. I think Washington just has too much talent on offense to lose this game. I think USC has too many question marks on defense, and Alex Grinch is still calling the plays. I'm taking the Huskies here. They'll move to 9-0, and they're for real at this point. They have a great pathway to the college football playoff here. I think Washington is putting themselves in a great spot. They should certainly be one of the teams in the big dance if they continue to win out. The schedule for them is tough in front of them, right? They do have some tough matchups coming up, but this is a tough trip on the road down to Southern Cal, but this team has won so far this season in tough situations. They got Utah, Oregon State down the pipeline. Big opportunity here for this Washington team to prove they're legit.
Yeah, as a USC fan, no pick from me. Should be a big one here. I think the biggest key maybe for USC, though, is probably going to be that lack of Washington pass rush. I think both teams going to have plenty of opportunity to uncork it. Going to be a lot of fireworks in this one. Should be a good one. And, the game being in LA certainly adds that intrigue of SC potentially having a chance. I think the team that probably forces the first turnover is probably going to be the team that wins this game. Should be a blast, though, Nick. Should be a good one on tap. That's going to be it for today's episode. I appreciate you joining me.
Looking forward to this. Should be a great Pac-12 matchup.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.